With just 2 races to go, one class getting set to be brought to a close, while the other 3 will look to go down to the finale. It's the penultimate race for the Motor City Racing IMSA Championship, and today we swing out to Autodromo International Algarve here for round number 7 of this 8-week championship. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the show. My name is Ola Ramble alongside Fenachine to bring you all of racing action from start to finish here on this fantastic Sunday afternoon. And Fen, today we go racing for our one and our only race here in Portugal before we jump all the way across Asia, headed to Japan next week for the season finale.
It's going to be 2 similarly looking tracks with long start-finish stretches, but plenty of differing areas in between that I think are making for some 2 good rounds at the end of the season. Algarve, such a fun one, so technical, much like we saw at Barcelona, but a nice breather and a good way to round out the season and get a little more elevation than we saw at Barcelona.
Fuji International Speedway, of course, regarded as the temple of speed. It's got a lot of fast-flowing corners within it. Not the case here this afternoon, as Fuji will Algarve sports a lot more slower technical sections, like you said, much like Barcelona. That said, the elevation at Algarve is some of the most aggressive that you can find out there on the iRacing service, and that makes this a true driver's racetrack and a significant challenge for the field to master here this afternoon. We'll get into which class is gearing up for to see their races brought to a close before too much longer, but for the time being, we have got GT3M qualifying currently underway, and they are making their way around this racetrack for the first time here this afternoon.
That they are getting the warm-up lap completed, get an idea of how the tires are responding, and see what the track temp feels like beyond the number that they can read when they're in the garage. So I think it's going to be qualifying here. Good, plenty of open track. It's not a nice, wide open space that gives you plenty of room to do so. But it'll be fun to see how these drivers get underway here in just a moment's time.
Right now on the racetrack, Stefan McLean, Dan Gorbatenko, Philip Roklowski, Kyle Marler, and Dennis Daniel all circulating the racetrack. It is a 5-car GTDM field, the lightest class in the afternoon. It'll be 7 in the pros, and then 6 for LMP2s and GTPs respectively. That said, quite a bunch of class representation or manufacturer representation still out here. Of course, you got a Lamborghini currently on the racetrack. You got your lone Acura in the field in the form of Gorbatenko. Roklowski and others are running the Porsche here this afternoon. Marler and the C-Sim crew, of course, still running the Ford Mustang here as well. But right now, it is all eyes on Stefan McLean as he is making his way towards the final corners of this race and is gearing up to see what he can do. He's going to be putting down the benchmark time this afternoon.
It's always good to get a good run out of this final corner, 15 of them in total. And it'll be interesting to see a great run here and a good exit out of the final corner. It gets you set up for a nice, long start-finish stretch, much like we'll see next week at Fuji as well. Critical to good lap times, especially in qualifying, but also the consistency there in the race pace. Such a fun opening set of corners as well to dive into a lap. And we'll see whether or not he can keep it on track as we get through a lap here at Portimao.
McLean and Marler putting down time. So has Gorbatenko and Roklowski. Dennis Daniel, his lap was invalidated. So McLean currently number 1, 143.645, leading the way. Dan Gorbatenko, number 2, 0.3 of a second off of the mark. With Roklowski 3rd, Marler 4th, Daniel, the one driver that's yet to put down a time. He is running 3rd in line of your field as they make their way through the middle sections of this racetrack.
See, especially as these drivers get through their first full laps and set initial times, how those times are going to improve throughout the next couple of laps when the tires fully get in that operating window. Just a little over that first out lap, and then halfway, I'd say throughout the first sector of that second lap, we'll see those drivers fully get into the operating window. So first full lap to improve, get a few tenths easily, and then it'll be the scramble to try to grab the last few in the closing stages of their qualifying.
McLean wanted to see if he can't improve on his time, wanted to get up towards the sharp end of the field and stay there. Chasing a 6.45. 3 out of the 4 times put down have been within the 143 second bracket. He would love to try to get a little bit closer to the 42s. Not sure if he's going to be able to fully make it to the 42s, but he might be able to get a little bit closer. How about that? He gets there right away. 142.8. New best time for Stephen McLean in this qualifying session, but Kyle Marler right behind, straight to the top with a 142.647.
It's a short-lived top of the grid there. Dennis Daniel not getting a solid lap this time by either. You're going to see how Philip McCloskey can find a good lap here this time by, losing out a little bit from that last time that he was able to set as a benchmark. A couple more drivers still need to put a lap time down that is sufficient to be counted and not, or really kept within the bounds of the racetrack, which is usually the only reason that these drivers will end up with an invalid lap time. It's going to be stepping over the track limits.
Yeah, last lap it was this left-hander right here, just went too far into the grass and got the time invalidated as a result. Hooking back to the right this time though, and looking to be doing a little bit better here on the afternoon. And this, of course, from the back end of Stephen McLean as he works to keep Kyle Marler in his rear view mirrors and a long way back as well. Now wanting to chase that number one spot. Almost a quarter of a second off the mark, though.
Yeah, so let's find a bit of time there. See if he can keep up with the rest of the field. Also interested to see how Dennis Daniel, as well as the rest of the field, also work their way around for a lap time. Good, consistent inputs is so key here, especially with the slower corners. So getting the opportunity to really allow those cars to both do a little bit of rotation as well as keeping on is a huge part of it.
Oh, he might get him here. 6.64, not going to be enough. He is still off the mark by just 17 thousandths of a second. Marler unable to improve. Dennis Daniel 142.701 will not be good enough because he has still been missing the valid lap. Keeps running off track. He is now on his fourth attempt and what could end up being his final one this next time by.
Yeah, so he doesn't have much time left in qualifying as they go from the GT3 AMS to the GT3 Pros here at the end of this lap. So one more opportunity here as Philip McCloskey got to jump up to the top of the order, finally finding that improvement after the last lap.
How's that? As Philip McCloskey jumps to the top spot of 142.597. Cruising back down into the hairpin, one of the best braking zones and one of the best pass opportunities on the racetrack here. I would argue better than turn one. Turn one being as much of a kink as it is, you're just unable to really execute a pass if you aren't already nearly clear by the time you get into the braking zone.
Yeah, if you're not alongside of the braking zone and able to lean on it, it's just one that ends up costing both you and the car you're trying to pass time, regardless of class. So it's just a hard opportunity. You get a better one in turn number 3, Lagos, and that's really the first opportunity in the lap that you have a good, you can really lean on the door if you get alongside in turn number 2, but it's not many good opportunities here outside of these slower, almost hairpin corners. You have 3 of them on the track, and then a couple more open hairpins that are less easy to pull off. Nice deep dives and alongside, so that overlap there. A hard place to pass. I think it's gonna be one that's gonna really test the multi-class drivers when we get into that multi-class traffic.
Dennis Daniel finally gets his time on the boards, and it is good enough for provisional pole of 142.514. Will put the Porsche to the number 1 spot. Rokoski, 143.743, not good enough. He will have one more attempt. Drivers now working this racetrack for the final time today because the GTD Pros are starting to make the way to the road, and Rokoski is going to be disrupted because off the road behind is the Acura of Dan Gorbatenko, and that is going to ruin the lap of the 117. All he can really do now is take the free chance to try pit entry, but he's not going to go for it.
I would say usually some of these drivers find pit entry a pretty easy one to master. It's not a very easy run off the start-finish stretch. So one, I don't think he was too worried about trying to get in line. Unfortunate break for Rokoski. See where he can improve over the course of the race at this point. Steve McLean, however, I think he's going to be setting himself up for one final attempt to improve this lap time.
So McLean and others making their way around. It's just him and Marler on the racetrack, both gunning for pole. McLean needs to find a 10th and a half. Marlin needs to find a 10th and a third. McLean trying to hunt down into the 5.14s. Not going to get. He does improve to a 6.41, and that will get him ahead of Kyle Marler. Marlin not going to improve. He is going to be coming down the pit road. So your 5-car GTD field is set. It is going to be Dennis Daniel, Philip Roklowski, Stefan McLean, Kyle Marler, and Dan Gorbatenko rounding out the 5-car field. And that brings to the GTD Pros the biggest field on the grid. On track, Cash Savage, Max Fletcher, Anthony Dre, Matt Marino, Will Lindley, and Scott Moose, along with Tony Calderaro, currently on your screens.
Yeah, good number of drivers there. I think looking to get some good data in, much like we talked about with the GTDs. This outlap going to be crucial in warming up the tires, making sure they also get a feel for how the track is going to respond to them once they get more properly into the window over the back half of this lap and kind of through the first couple of corners of a flying lap. With all this this track space, I think seeing all these cars a little bunched up, we'll see them probably spread out over here a little bit more, but it always reminds me it's a little bit interesting trying to get these cars around. It's always I'm curious how much that draft really applies to these cars.
So first flying lap especially underway for the GTD Pro field. Right behind Cash Savage, who is leading the way. You, of course, have Fletcher and Lindley, the CSIM 1-2, who have been finishing in the top 2 spots of the podium for half the races now in this championship in the 1-2 spots. And this has been a stellar afternoon for the both of them. Realistically, the championship here, Fenn, it's going to be between these two at season's end.
It certainly is. I think it's going to be an interesting one to see how much these CSIM drivers are going to battle with each other over the closing stages and how much they want to duke it out. I think it'll really come down to who can build the best consistency, and especially if we get into multi-class traffic or the likes of other cars mixing it in. Cash Savage notably often likes to mix it up with these two drivers, but seeing where he ends up along with them, I think is going to be a key part of this puzzle as well.
Yeah, right now, Lindley and Fletcher, they're separated by only 11 points entering today, and it's another 428, by the way, back to Jake Van Hees, which really makes it quite a significant challenge that these drivers are going to have to contend with. So Lindley and Fletcher definitely going to be the two fighting for this one at season's end of the pro category.
Certainly will be. And while we talk about these in the race and its finishing, as well as the battles in class for this race, I think the championship is down to a pretty close fight. Both of these CSIM drivers running out wide as a result of that final corner. Let's try again for this next lap.
You see him pulling aside, immediately letting his teammate through, not wanting to get involved, and looking like only one time so far out of all 4 or 5 of the opening salvo able to get on the cards. It was Cash Savage with 1:43.827. Here comes Tony Calderaro. He is still working with Matt Marino around the final corners of the racetrack. They're chasing that 43.827. No dice for Calderaro, not even close. He'll be the second time on the board. What about Matt Marino's Aston Martin? Into the 145. So definitely just taking the time to get a bit more heat into the tires. Those laps, they were not pushing even close to full chat.
Certainly not. Like I said, the first half of this lap is still one where the tires are warming up on that first flyer. So the second flyer should be where these tires are really now in the window. They can start to lean on them as much as they'll want to, both in qualifying as well in the race. Cash Savage trying to build up a little bit of a gap between himself and the two CSIM drivers that are right behind him. They under they swap for position to those two CSIM drivers as well, creating a little bit of a buffer. So we'll interesting to see where Max Fletcher ends, not at the end of this lap, at the end of next lap after he gets a full flying lap in as well.
Headed our way into Sagres, and then of course into Galp, that long sweeping right-hander that takes you back to the front straightaway. All the way around the shorter layouts of this venue. Looking for a better time, and I think one of the seats... Oh, hold on! One car spins deep in the field. That would have been Matt Marino, I think that went around. Cash Savage at the number 1 spot, 2.46.5. for him. Marino will not get the time on the board. Sorry, not just yet. At least it was the 18 of Scott Moose that went spinning out of the final corner. Evidently did not have enough downforce planted on that rear wing.
That's also able to, that final corner, a very tricky one to get correct. And you can easily, if you lean on the throttle just a little too much, you're able to get that rear end out. And especially in the Porsche, once you get that rear end out, it does not want to come back to you very easily until you kind of let the car re-catch itself. And ideally, you don't want to be in a barrier before that happens. And thankfully for Scott Moose, that was able to be caught, wrangled up.
Marino's still in the 145s, even slower than his first lap. And at this point, if you're Marino, you're looking a little bit worried about your pace.
A little bit. I guess I get the feeling that I wonder if he's just kind of trying to see. A few of these drivers are ones that are looking to see where they can just kind of allow themselves a little more time to get into this window. I'm also curious if he had a moment earlier on in the lap which cost him that time.
Max Fletcher fighting his way. Headed into the hairpin just shy of Sagres, up over the rise. We saw Will Lindley allow him through. Not wanting to push the issue too much as we continue to trade back and forth. And time is quickly running out if these guys want to contend Cash Savage for the #1 spot on the cards. Making their way into the final corner now. And Fletcher over the line. 141, that should do it if it counts.
Ooh,
and it does.
Does indeed. However, Will Lindley, his teammate, still unable to find a lap that isn't with an off track amongst all this. He's going to be the only GTD Pro driver still without a lap time, at least in the books. So that's going to be, I think, pretty rough for a few of these drivers because almost the entire GTD field is in between them and the top 2 drivers of GTD Pro.
Anthony Dring gets onto the boards as well. So does Scott Moose. They go 3rd and 6th respectively. Calderaro unable to improve for the 4th place spot. And here comes Matt Marino. And it's a 44 this time. Gets down to a 5.32, but that's still slower than the entire GTD Anfield. In fact, that's the same story for 3rd through 6th so far in your GT3 field.
So still got to find a little bit of lap time for these drivers, and it's so easy to just have a bad exit out of one of these hairpins that costs you a few tenths, and that really slows down your lap time. And a collection of those over the course of a lap, or a couple of moments where you can't regain that lap time, sees them still trying to fight their way through the GTD Pro field, or the GTD field, in their effort to set good lap times in GTD Pro. So it's going to make for a very interesting opening couple of laps as the GTD and GTD Pro drivers, I think, are going to be mixing it in with each other pretty much from the start.
Well, it's going to be a quiet GTD Pro race at this point if the field remains this much separated. Right now, you got a 5-second spread from top to bottom. That is very abnormal in just a 6-car field. Well, it's going to be a 7-car field if Lindley can get on the boards. Cash Savage, a 151, not good enough to contend for the top spot. Lindley finally on the boards. He'll go to 3rd with a 5.48, while Fletcher continues to improve at the top with an 8.59 to the 41 bracket.
Drivers finally getting a couple of lap times in. Will Lindley still has to deal with Dennis Daniels for overall GT3 timing. So interested to see as well what the other GTD Pro drivers can accomplish before the end of the session.
Calderaro finally showing a bit more pace, goes 142.717, good enough for 4th place in his field. Matt Marino over the line. And he will break into the 143s, but he's going to pull off the racetrack. That's the best he can do, and that is bottom of the barrel of the entire GT3 field today.
Certainly is. I think Matt Marino been struggling with the pace in a couple of these tracks, the ones that I think that he has less experience on from what I've seen in between the races amongst others, drivers, and that kind of conversation that happens over on the Discord. So interested to see if this is another one of those tracks that is one that he is struggling to find the pace in.
Well, we are about to make our way into the LMP2 field here this afternoon as they are making their way to the end of pit road already. In fact, they have just been released. So LMP2 qualifying officially underway. These drivers are now working this racetrack for the final time in GTD Pro qualifying. So they're going to want to get around the M's. This is their last chance to do so. Or Fletcher and Savage have the potential to run away with this one into the distance. Will Lindley out of the final couple of corners now. Savage trying to see if he can't improve towards the top end of the boards. Will Lindley not going to get there. You saw him lift off before he even got to the line. I think he got invalidated.
Yeah. I believe the last 3 drivers all took too much curbing at the end, with the likes of Cash Savage, unfortunately, leading them astray.
Dring will jump to 4th and 6th place overall to the GT3 field. That would be 6 of 12, that is. So right in the mid pack, Tony Calderaro. Last car in the race. I want to see if he can find anything extra here. 142.6. Will that be enough to improve him? It will. He will jump up 1 spot in the overall field to 8th overall, but he'll remain 5th in his class. So in the GTD Pro field, it is Fletcher from Savage, from Lindley, from Dring, from Calderaro, from Moose to Marino, as the LMP2s now take to the racetrack.
This is where we'll see the lap times kind of change, as well as the lap style, how these cars take a lot of these shorter hairpins, as well as a lot of this track a little more flowing because they have a little more downforce to apply. You'll see them lean on that accelerator as well throughout most of this lap a little bit more than we'll see with the GTD and GTD Pro drivers.
Bit of a moment there for the 412 of James Curtin. Also on track, Miguel Torres, Casey Gatola, Alex Lalonde, Parker Sukup, and Christopher Dane-Kohler. So they're making their way onto the racetrack now. Number 72 entry has been on fire lately, and Lalonde wanted to see if he can continue to improve his standing in the pack entering the final race. Lalonde currently stands 142 points clear of Christopher Dane-Kohler. So while it's not going to be decided tonight, it's looking pretty well in his hand. He would need a disastrous outing, not just today, but also next week for him to even have a chance at losing this fight at this point.
Very much so. I'd be interested to see as well how well these drivers see what different pace they have. We saw Alex Lalonde, while usually doing pretty successfully, a slow effort at Barcelona. See if he has the pace coming back to him. I'm also curious to see how close this field remains given the nature of the battlings that we've seen in previous weeks. See if the game of consistency is won or lost by these drivers in the same way they saw at Barcelona last Sunday.
It is a 6-car LMP2 field, and first lap's about to complete it in just a few moments' time here. Lalonde making his way through the final few corners now, and gearing up to power his way back around to the front straightaway, but we'll get this show back on the road. So Lalonde, first lap down to the LMP2 qualifying field. It'll be a 136.830. Hot on his heels, Miguel Torres, 137.594. So far, Lalonde remains on pole. Here comes Casey Gatola, as well as Christopher Dane-Kohler, 137 and a 141, respectively. Gatola not pushing his car in this opening lap. Parker Sukup goes up to a 138. James Curtin making his way to the final corner this time by as well. He'll look to come across the line, and it will be a 138.775. So yet again, a pretty broad spread, but at least all drivers have times on the boards after one attempt.
Yeah, a little bit better run there. We're going to see a couple, I think, may fail to get a second lap in as they're starting to push the limits of what they're allowed to take for the track. Be interesting to see as well where these drivers work their way back on. Parker Sukup, I think, back on track after having a moment into the gravel in turn number 1 this most recent time by.
He actually took a tow to pit road, and he...
Yep.
So as a result, he is back onto the racetrack, albeit now on cold tires. This is what happened to Sukup. Turn 1. And... Oh, got unsettled on the exit of those curves off, and he did find the wall. Yep, that would do it. You're not driving that car back.
Not easily, at least. And it's a lot easier. You can take the tow pit lane. Won't cost you anything other than a little bit of pride here in qualifying. So able to get back out on the track with fresh paint, put together a car, and see if he can get a better lap time in. Sitting 4th right now. I think plenty of opportunity there for him to get back into it, as Alex Lalonde getting a 136.6. Devin.
Torres' attempt not going to count. Case Gatola 137.916. That will put him to 4th in the field. Now waiting on James Curtin as everyone else started to take toes back to pit road, wanting to get some fresh Michelins on before the tail end of this qualifying session. 5 minutes to go before we let the GTPs loose. 1:38.5 for Curtin. Not going to be enough to go understand he is still down by half a second just from Parker Sukup, making his way to start his next lap here.
Watching a couple of those drivers with cold tires work their way out onto the racetrack and having to relearn that the car has a little bit less grip and will, in fact, take you for a ride if you push on those tires too early, too quickly. Alex Lalonde having to reset to pit lane after coming out of the pit lane because of a spin there and wanting to make sure those tires are properly heated instead of using the slide method to warm them up.
Miguel Torres wanted to see if he can't get something on the cards. The Vice Esports number 56, Delar P217, looking good, but still needs to find a full second if he wants to best Alex Lalonde for the number 1 spot in this qualifying session. Yet again, Lalonde looking to have a pretty quiet night here in Portugal. Does improve by almost half a second, but that still leaves him 4.5 tenths off.
Yeah, I'm super curious to see who else can get into the 136s as Alex Lalonde kind of on an island as a result of that stellar qualifying time. See if he can also improve his own time to keep on opening up the gap as Dan Cole is going to come across the line.
Just starting a new lap for him. He was unable to, he had just come out of pit road. Curtin unable to improve. He'll put down a 1:38.6, so no jump for him. Katola and Sukup nose to tail as they make their way to the final corners. Katola's just looking to start his lap.
Yes, Katola, like we saw with Dan Kohler, on many drivers jumping to pit lane to get that lap started. Parker Sukup going to jump up to 3rd with that 137.44.
Good effort. Lalonde just put down his warm-up lap as well, so he is now on what could end up being one of his... Well, that's not going to do it there. That's 2 wide off the race, so that'll get him an easy off-track 1X, so this lap not going to count, but that said, I'm not sure if he even has to worry too much. He's been looking solid all day today, and if he ends up knocked off the top spot in the qualifying here, he's got that race pace to back it up.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm curious to see as well where that consistency changes for him, if anywhere.
So that number 1 entry now leading the way. 1:37.841, his best time. Needs to get 4 tenths and 1 thousandths if he wants to improve up the card. So that would need to be a 1:37.399 if he wants to improve to get up to the number 3 spot on the grid. That'll do it. 2:37, good enough for 3rd, and only a 10th off of 2nd if he can continue to capitalize on that pace.
So well, with I think a couple minutes left, he'll be able to at least get this lap in before we see the GTPs take to the racetrack.
James Curtin is backed up heavily. I think he's trying to give a tow here to his teammate Parker Sukup down the straightaway, wanting to give him 1 bit of extra oomph here. And look at the slipstream, and look at how it just pulls off to the right-hand side, moves aside to keep Sukup from moving off of the racing line. That was definitely strategic that you saw there from that 412 of Curtin.
Yeah, James Curtin trying to help out his teammate there. Something we see done every now and then in qualifying across all types of racing, so no exception here. Any chance that you can give to a teammate to improve, help them improve, or get the favor returned at some point. We'll see how much that improves Parker Sukup's lap time, especially in these opening sectors.
Christopher Dame Kohler now, last contender on the cards here in qualifying for LMP2, and he'll be the first driver across the line to take that checkered flag. 1:37, 2:37 needs to improve to a, I believe a 1-2-1, or 1-3-1. Sorry, if he wants to get up onto the cards here and get to the front row of the grid. Can he find that extra 10th and 4 across the stripe? He does, and then some. Front row of the grid for Dane Kohler, only a 10th and a half off of Lalonde. Just not enough to contend with the Canadian.
Yeah, it does a great improvement, though. Cuts down that gap. Curious to see how much that consistent pace will take him into a fight with Lalonde over the course of this, as these drivers are working their way around the final couple of corners now. Parker Sukup able to hold it in the lines. We see these GTD and GTD Pro drivers end up going much further wide. And he is able to get to 137.1 and take over for third.
Casey Catola wanting to find something extra as he comes across the line. 137.964, not going to do it. That wraps up your LMP2 qualifying then, leaving just the GTP. So at the top, it is Lalonde, Dane Kohler, Sukup, Torres, Catola, and James Curtin, all leading the way.
I think a very interesting bit of racing here for these drivers. I think multi-class traffic still going to be the thing to keep an eye on over the course of this once we get into the racing action, and especially given the nature of the ability to pass for these GTP and LMP2 drivers. I think it's going to be a fun but awkward dance we'll see between these three classes in terms of car classes and four classes of drivers over the course of the evening.
And it is, of course, the class that is contending for the championship here as well, Finn. I mean, right now, this is the class that has potential to be, fixing a power issue, but trying to get itself wrapped up today, right? I mean, right now, Nate Benarowitz,
yes.
Benarowitz clear by 300 points right now from Jeremy Roos for the 1 and 2 spots. In the qualifying, in the championship standings. If he outscores by 50 today, then he wins that championship. As we've established, when you factor in the fact that there's a 100-point difference between first and sixth, it's a doable prospect.
It is. It's going to be one that's going to have to see Nate Benarowitz have a very fantastic and consistent race, and one where we see Jimmy Roos maybe either be unlucky in the pit cycle as well as maybe lap traffic playing a hand in there as well. See where these drivers also all sort themselves out in qualifying. The possibility is there, but I think if Jeremy Roos is as consistent as he's been throughout most of this season, it's going to be one that's going to be a little bit harder to achieve for him to lock out this soon. But it's not undoable, which is why I think we talk about it. I think it's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on over the course of this race.
So Roost and the 69 entry of Jack Peterson will be the first cars put down times. Also on track, Richard Danielewski, Braden Carlson, and Alan Gullison. Here comes Jeremy Roos through the final corner now, blasting his way to the front straightaway. And a 137.5 to kick things off. Not good enough for the number 1 spot overall, but it will do for now for GTP, and he is only going to get quicker from here. Other times coming in, Jack Peters goes to the number 2 spot, Carlson to 3rd. Gullison to the number 1 spot now to 5th place overall. Richard Danielewski will get on the cards as well with a 138.951. And let's ride aboard for a lap here, Finn, with Nate Benarowitz, and he can take you for a lap at speed around Algarve.
Certainly can. A dive down into Primera, turn number 1. A series of corners here, 1, 2, and 3, all kind of a almost not quite a decreasing radius, but almost feels like it as you get into turn number 3, Lagos. Such a fun hairpin, a great way to set up for the middle section, the end of sector 1, a run down into the first hairpin of Terre Vip. Turn number 5, good exit here. You got to be a little bit, you dance on the throttle for pretty much every class as you get through turn number 4, 5, hard into the braking zone. Big opportunity here, especially if you get brave in the braking for an overtake. Coming out here into 6 and 7 when you're working your way up into Samsung corner of turn number 8. Little dance of the brakes before you get onto a proper for this very open, almost not a little over 90-degree turn to the right as you work your way through the second sector. Craig Jones, turn number 9. A fast one. We'll see the LMP2s and GTPs take this at speed, full throttle. GT3s in the GTD Pro category is going to be a little bit more of a dance, and when they get into their fuel stints proper, they will also be flat out, but it'll be a bit of an awkward change in strategy for those drivers. Portimao, such a fun one we just worked through. Turn number 13, very late and deep into the braking zone there, as Nate Benarowitz works his way through into Sagres, turn number 14. It's such an awkward corner to get through for any class. A lot easier when you have a little bit of downforce, but still no less strange. And the final corner, Gulp, 15 of those corners is going to be one you are on the limit for no matter what class you're in. This ability to work together is going to be such a huge one to work it through. Nate Benarowitz is going to jump to the top of the order with that one.
And punching upwards of 190 miles an hour down to the turn number 1 as well. Also able to improve on their times. Gullison and Daniel Lusky, no surprise there, they go to 2nd and 3rd. Carlson jumped up to the 4th place spot, but Roost and Peterson were not able to get valid lap times on the card, so they're going to continue to remain down on the field.
But they still have, the nice thing about the GTP category here at Motor City is they have 15 minutes, a couple more minutes than the rest of the field does. And it really benefits for these drivers, given how tricky the nature of warming up the tires are in these cars and how tricky they can be, especially with a hybrid system, really kind of changing your off-throttle kind of expectations. It's, I think the benefit of adding 5 minutes to their qualifying time is well worth it for the drivers to have really a good handful of laps they feel comfortable with at the end of their qualifying runs.
Powering across, Roos gets down with a 1:35.531. Good enough for provisional pole, 0.8 of a second. What a way to punch back against current points leader, trying to stay in the fight. Enter the final race. Brady Carlson goes to the number 2 spot. The 694 Valley Gullis comes across the line. He can't capitalize. The 69 engine Jack Peterson had his lap time invalidated. He is still looking for more. Daniel Lusky now across the line at 1:36.028. He will go to 4th. Here comes Benarowitz. Can he go to the number 1 spot? Once again, looking for the top of the charts, and yes, he does. 1:44, and yet again, no matter what the field puts down, Nate says, what you can do, I can do better.
It's interesting to see. I'm excited to see if Jeremy Roost, as well as the rest of the field, able to close down that distance, 4/10 or just shy of it, between him and the P2 of Jeremy Roost, and then Braden Carlson another 3.5 back. Very interested to see how this gap is going to close down as we get through the back half of these qualifying for the GTP drivers. Nate Benarowitz looking to set the precedent in wanting to make this championship decided, but he has to be consistent both here in qualifying and in the race pace. I think that's where we'll see a bit of interesting dynamics there, especially when the multi-class action will make it a little bit harder than I think we've seen at a couple of the tracks here this season.
Firing back to the start-finish line. 1:35.114. But it's not gonna count. Thought for a moment he might have been able to challenge Benarowitz, but the lap was tossed aside. Carlson goes to a 5:47, not able to improve on his positioning. Looking like a similar story throughout the field, except for Jack Peterson. Peterson finally gets to the boards. He will go to 4th place. Here goes Daniel Lusky at 1:35.857. Gets into the 1:35 bracket. That punches him off at the bottom step of the boards. And Benarowitz, 188, off by 44 thou last time by.
Just off by a few hundredths, but able to keep that car moving the right direction and also showing that he is going to be at least that fast and pretty consistent throughout the race pace if his 2 laps are to be believed.
Right now, it's a pretty dry track out there. Only 44% of humidity in the air, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Prime conditions for racing here in Algarve. Making this quite the show this afternoon. And Jack Peterson looking like he has had a spin off the road.
That he has. Take a look at it here. Maybe in the exit of this corner. He's going to think just kind of slow down and pull it over to have a tow. I think that's like a mechanical failure in real life of some kind for a moment there.
Either that or he's just trying to cool the tires off.
That's very true.
Jimmy Roos powering the final corner. Still have 5 minutes to go in the qualifying session this afternoon. 1:36, so he's backing off, trying to set himself up. And we're kind of in that phase now, right? We're in the back-off point where drivers are easing off, trying to get the tires cooled back down so they can go at it again a little bit harder here in the closing stages. How about Alan Gullison, though, going to the number 2 spot? He still wants to push.
That he certainly does. He's looking to get that opportunity, see if he can't close down that gap, looking to see if he can get into those final couple corners.
Ian Drennan saying hello from a Delta Airlines flight somewhere around the realm of 30,000 feet. Watching from up high today. I doubt he's over Portimao, though.
I doubt he is. Well, I doubt he is as well. It's not impossible, though, theoretically.
I don't think, does Delta
Also,
fly to Portugal? I don't think Delta flies to Portugal.
Probably not, but I have hope in my heart that it could be possible. Also,
You made me curious now. They do offer flights to Portugal.
oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, they fly in and out of Lisbon from New York. How about that? And daily service out of Boston as well. How about that? Learn something new today.
Absolutely. Well, so it is possible.
And funny enough, they fly into Porto as well.
Well, there you go.
Oh, you'll love to see it.
Unfortunately,
not Portimao. Still Porto.
Ah, well, that's fair.
Yeah, so close, so close.
I am surprised that Ian Drennan didn't bring his whole sim rig with him to play from the plane.
And not to mention, that airline Wi-Fi, it ain't cheap. It's not cheap. But Arwitt's new fastest lap on the session, a 34.971.
As you said earlier, I think bears repeating in a fraction. Nate Bernard was still trying to say, come catch me. Oh, wait, I'll be here.
I don't know if anyone's got any effort for him, though.
Especially in the closing stages here, a lot of drivers trying to find the time to kind of cool off the tires, get one last good flying run in here with the last 3 minutes. You should be able to get around, halfway through this lap now, able to get one more, I think, solid lap in, as they are 1:30 lap times, just a little bit over. It's possible, but I would have to agree it might be a little bit far-fetched unless Braden Carlson, Alan Gulson, Jeremy Roost, they all put in just the perfect lap.
Oh, how about this? You see him back off, trying to get that heat back into the tires. Might be set up for one more push lap here. They do have time to back off for just a little bit on this lap and then come back around for one more attempt.
Yeah, I think that's going to be what the plan is for a lot of these drivers as well, as the likes of Nate Bernarowitz, who went a little wide in turn number 13, this most recent time by. So to see if he has a one final attempt as well. Braden Danielewski is going to come around to start his final flyer.
And Nate Bernarowitz coming to pit road, so he is done with qualifying today.
Yeah, I think that last attempt was maybe all he had in the tank in terms of fuel. Because you want to make sure these cars are pretty light. Don't want to add too much into it, because that will slow down a lap time to add in more weight via fuel.
Jack Peterson jumps to the number 3 spot, getting around Gullison and Roots with a 135.354. He stands just 13 thousandths off of Carlson. You take Bernarowitz out of the picture, it's a real close fight. I mean, you got Carlson, Peterson, and Gullison all within a tenth.
We certainly do. I think it's going to make for a very spicy opening couple laps of this race as these drivers try to sort out who's actually the fastest and most consistent over the course of a stint. But I think if they keep battling like that and don't involve Nate Bernarowitz will just take off and leave them all behind.
Carlson powering into the final hairpin before making his way for those right-handers back to the start-finish line. He will have an attempt at one more lap here this afternoon, but he needs to find 37 hundredths if he wants to match Nate Bernarowitz on the top of the cards. Coming out of that final corner, and we'll see what he has in store for this field. Nothing this time.
I think at this time, but still opportunity to get one last lap in. I think we'll see a couple of these drivers make their way down pit lane and practice the pit lane entry. Richard Danielewski almost turning that car sideways to get it into pit lane. Oh, big slide there in Portimao. or sorry, in Lagos, turn number 3 there for Alan Gullison.
So 1 car off the boards, and well, that just leaves Carlson because Jack Peterson and Alan Gullison, along with Jimmy Roos, have all pulled off the racetrack. So is Richard Danilewski. So Carlson, the last contender on the racetrack.
Working through Samsung.
It's going to have to be the lap of a lifetime if he wants to contend with Bernardwitz at the top of the cards. And this could be big, right? Because remember, Bernardwitz is trying to get that championship today. And with Roos having such a poor outing, this type of qualifying position could really shake up how many points Bernardwitz needs to score in the main race.
Yeah, it certainly, I think, will be an interesting one to see how much Bernardwitz is going to need for this race as a result of the performance there. And maybe one where if Jimmy Roos doesn't end up kind of in the top 3, it may be one that gets a little bit more decided. Brayden Carlson flies across that stripe.
Not enough. He tried, but not enough.
Does improve to second, though.
Yes, he does. He'll get that, but he will get nothing more. So qualifying in the books. Time to see who's going to be starting wherever race in action here this afternoon. And we'll start things off, of course, with your 6-car GTP field. It is Nate Bernardwitz in the number 1 spot alongside Brayden Carlson, second place on the field. Jack Peterson and Alan Gullison sit 3rd and 4th, rounding out the field. It's going to be Jeremy Roost alongside Richard Danilewski.
In LMP2 is going to be Alex Lalonde, going to lead it off alongside Christopher Dam-Kohler. The likes of Parker Sukup going to be alongside Miguel Torres for 3rd and 4th. Final 2 of the LMP2 field, Casey Katola going to be alongside James Curtin for the 6-car LMP2 grid.
And moving on down now into our 7-car GTD Pro field, it is starting things off Max Fletcher alongside Cash Savage on the front row of this grid. From there, Will Linden will roll off 3rd for the GTD Pros. He is alongside the Corvette of Anthony Dream with Vice Esports Amsoil number 132. From there, Tony Colorado will hit the Ames Owala number 24 Mercedes down in 5th alongside the Ames number 18 Porsche for Scott Moose in 6th. And then Matt Marino with the Ames Aston Martin. Marino tailing the grid 2 seconds off the pace in GTD Pro.
And in GTD, Dennis Daniel going to lead off those cars alongside Philip Rukloski for P2. In 3rd, I believe it's going to be Stephen McLean to drive alongside Kyle Marler, just ahead in those 3rd and 4th. 5th is going to be Dan Gorbatenko. All 5 of those GTD cars going to be intermixed with the GTD Pros.
And Gorbatenko said, and I quote, trying to do the Acura justice, but everyone got hands here all of a sudden. So that Acura, bottom of the field, but only less than 0.3 of a second off the mark as well. So it could have a chance for some excitement there as well. Going to do a quick calculation here to see what at this point what Bernardwitz needs to get around Jeremy Roost. And well, Fen, we'll let you break down the weather conditions because things have cooled and eased up on the wind just a little bit as we start our parade lap.
Certainly will be. It's going to be a little bit easier for these drivers, less of a tailwind for them in certain parts of this racetrack, as well as the cooling down will allow for those temperatures to drop just a little bit. The track is going to get a little bit nicer in terms of how that grip is going to feel for these drivers, though they need to warm up the tires. You're going to see the GTPs and LMP2s here as they get through the full pace lap. They're still trying to get some heat in those tires because it's going to be a huge part of making sure they survive the first few corners once we get underway in a few moments time. So
update on your championship running order. It is not looking good for Jeremy Roost. Roost needs to finish at least second place to even remain in the fight. That is if Nate Bernardwitz wins this race. It's a 50-point deficit from 1st to 3rd. Now, if Bernardwitz finishes 2nd, then he would need for Roost to finish down in 5th or lower. So effectively, if Bernardwitz wins this and Roost can't fight to the top 3, game over.
Certainly. But if Nate Bernardwitz ends up anywhere else on the grid, as long as he's not last, he's also still in a fight for Fuji.
Once again, my name is Rebel alongside Fennicini. We're bringing you all of the action from start to finish of our 1 hour race about to kick off here this afternoon. Let's see what's coming up here on Green Flag TV, as it's going to be the Aspire Racing Sports Car Championship headed out to Imola on Tuesday alongside the Mid-Atlantic Racing Series at Road America, and the penultimate round for the OMSRL Cup Series in Nashville Super Speedway. Beerley will be back for more on Wednesday night. They'll be joined by the Speed Cup Series at Texas Motor Speedway. And then next Saturday, the SRA IEL Truck Series draws to a close, as it'll be Zane Bailey versus Elliott Kandra at Kansas for all the marbles in the final race on the 16 race championship.
It's going to be, I think, a pretty exciting one for those drivers to see how they end up at the end of a championship, much like we'll see for Fuji next week and the rest of these championship battles that we're talking about outside of the GTPs, which I think is going to be the only one that can be decided tonight if everything goes well for Nate Benarowitz or goes well for Jeremy Roos to keep in that fight.
GTPs will be the first ones to lead us to the green. Once again, class separation between GTPs and LB2s and the LB2s to GT3s. And as always, happy that you're having us for more racing action here on a fantastic Sunday night. Working our way into the restart zone this afternoon. It's a long final corner for the Porsche 911 GT3 pace car. You see our GTPs cluster up. Jim Roos in the number 33, 2 rows behind current points leader Nate Benarowitz. He knows what he needs to do, and it is finish well here today. Safety car is off, green flag is out, and we are racing in Portugal for the second to last time of season number 2 of the Motor City Racing IMSA Championship. Into turn number 1, an immediate offensive, and hold on as Brady Carlson sends Benarowitz off the road. Alan Gollison with the cutback, and he's going to take out your race leader. Benarowitz has been turned, and it's huge dramas for the championship now. The LMP2 is off the road as well behind them.
Yeah, a bit of a mix as well for the LMP2s, but they're a little bit smoother in terms of how they got through turn number 1, outside of a couple of wide lines for those drivers. Likewise for the GT3 field as they work through. Gravel being dragged onto the track from Nate Benarowitz from where he's come back on.
You and I remember Aspire when they came out here, Ben. There was a host of incidents coming up over this corner with unsafe rejoins. Not going to be the case today, at least for now. But holy cow, that has blown this championship wide open now in the GTP field.
It certainly has. Been interested to see how much that will have lasting implications as they get into the still have an hour of racing. Plenty of opportunity for these drivers to keep up the fight and see where Nate Benarowitz ends up at the end of this. But that definitely allows for Jeremy Roos to have a fighting chance going to Fuji, if we called it right now, but we still have many more laps of racing to go. Here is that incident as Alan Gollison, but Nate Benarowitz just comes back into the racing line as well.
So watch this here again, because you're going to watch as Carlson is going to loose the back end into turn number 1. Benarowitz has to swing wide just to avoid him, and then his teammate, the sister car, cleans him out in turn 2. Now, I will give Alan Gollison a bit of devil's advocacy there. Benarowitz turned in like he wasn't at the apex already.
Yes, yeah. Nate Benarowitz gave, I think, no real room for Alan Gollison to be there, and just kind of tried. And there's that incident with Parker Suka.
He was there. He was right up against the sausage curbs. I don't know where he was. He couldn't go any further to the left.
He couldn't go any further to the left, and Nate Benarowitz kind of came across like there was nobody in the racing line after going off track. Yes, to avoid a spinning Braden Carlson, who I believe was also just trying to avoid running into where Nate Benarowitz took a kind of very safe turn number 1. I think it was a very wise decision for Nate Benarowitz, but I think that it ended up causing more problems than it solved by trying to be patient in that opening corner for Nate.
And as we anticipated, the LMP2 field is hotly contested for every position that is not for the number 1 spot or for the last spot as well. Lalonde already breaking out a 3.6-second gap, but they're separated less than half a second per car from second all the way back to 5th in class here. So right now, Dame Kohler from Torres and Kurtz from Katola all leading the way on a garage match on the field. And right behind them is Ben Arowitz, who is going to be a real impatient driver trying to get through to try to recover.
Yeah, but the lap time and the pace differential, not that different. The biggest times that you see these cars really stretch the legs of the hybrid system is really what makes the GTPs the faster class between these two. In these medium speed sections, that's where you see it start to stretch its legs, and especially down the start-finish stretch, you'll see this car want to make a pass, at least for one of these cars. In the LP2 field, has this battle for the lead is starting to pick back up.
Checking in on that for a brief moment. Miguel Torres round the inside of Dane Kohler. No problems there as Ben Arowitz trying to power down the inside of James Curtin. Casey Tola taking full advantage of that one. He's going to shoot to the inside as well to the 412. And real close to the back of the Porsche 963. Curtin and Katola still 2 by for the 4th place spot as they make their way up and over the rise of turn 4.
Yeah, they have not kept out of each other. Still too wide. James Curtin squeezing. We saw James Curtin almost run into Nate Benarowitz in turn number 1. Finally gets the move made. But Casey Tola gonna have a great run up to Samsung. Huge dip there. Gotta be careful, otherwise you can lose these cars pretty quickly, even with the grip in there. But late braking from James Curtin is gonna cause this to swing back into Tola's favor.
Boy, they are going at it for 4th here, aren't they? Just no holds barred between the two. And I think you kind of put it aptly, right? The Dallara P217s are cars that are a lot more planted in my experience than the GTPs are. But that said, when they go in a hurry. At least the GTPs, you can kind of feel it out a little bit more. Battle for the lead is on as well as Jack Peterson putting Alan Gullison under fire here for the number 1 spot. Oh, contact! And that's going to send Gullison around.
And I would say, now, I was originally going to say it's going to be a grudge match. Then I think it was going to be a brawl. Now I think it's just a street fight between all of these drivers in GTP. As Jack Peterson spins Alan Gullison, I don't think it was any fault of his outside of being at the wrong place at the right time. See here that contact from Jeremy Roos. Narrowly avoids Alan Gullison, has to dip wide to do so.
And that could have been a championship-ending incident if he had been collected in that as well, with how fast the closing rates were. Once again, Curtin down the inside of Katola, but Katola continues to hold on for 2nd place. All of this, virtually no fights going on throughout the GTD field in the entirety of this race. That's why I haven't checked into them much, but it is on in the prototypes today. It's a pretty unique change of pace.
It certainly is. I would say there's a couple of overall GTD or GT3 positions being fought out for the time being, but none quite as scrappy as the likes that we've seen in both GTP and LMP2. As these two drivers continue to swap for position.
Goodness gracious. I mean, especially Katola and Curtin, they've been going back and forth for the last several laps here extremely consistently. Holy Toledo. I think we're finally able to get things more or less settled down. Some of the GT3 field still hot and heavy. Little Road Kowalski and Stephen McLean. Man, around goes McLean. Takes out one of the pros. That's Anthony Dring off in the Corvette right in front of him.
Yeah, Anthony Dring actually, I think, ending up initially into the quarter panel of Stephen McLean with that car just tracking, I think, a little bit wider than he anticipated. But then that turned into kind of the pendulum effect. It swung back around as Stephen McLean lost control of that.
Oh, and the lockup of James Curtin going to send Katola straight through in turn 3.
And these two just swapping position as frequently as they are allowed to.
An attempted look from Will Lindley to get down the inside of a GTDM leader. Dennis Daniel, this is for 3rd. The over GTD field, he's going to lunge for this time down the inside. Wants to get up there to fight it out with Cash Savage, with Max Fletcher having taken that top spot away in the midst of all of this chaos.
Max Fletcher and Cash Savage, I think they are as they were in the lead of this race at least from what they were where they qualified.
Yes.
But they had been going back and forth very briefly while we were watching all that GTP and LMP2 prototype action that was developing.
Boy, that was a street fight for the opening few minutes. I think we're finally able to kind of calm things
certainly
down, at least for now. Yet again, as always, the LMP2s, when they get to fighting, they are one of the most unhinged fields that you can find out there in the grid. It doesn't matter what series you're in.
I would say whenever you see, I think, any amount of door-to-door combat happening in the LMP2 or GTP fields, we call it a street fight. I think it's quite apt, as you never know who's going to swing next once the fists start flying, proverbially, obviously.
So the field is starting to calm down just a wee bit. Issues for James Curtin, it looks like, having a bit of a moment, and that's going to drop him back. Now, the question is, has he had a more piece of contact with Casey Catola in front of him to cause this?
I think this might be the lockup that we saw in the Lagos. That's, I think, the only thing that really rings a bell to me.
Well, he tried for something, but overshot.
Yeah. Keeps out of the harm's way, though.
Meanwhile, Rich Danilewski and Alan Gullison remaining 4th and 5th in the GTP field. This fight not showing any signs of going away anytime soon.
So now Alan Gullison looking to see if he can't pick up the pieces there to end up at least or salvage something of a decent result here from where he was up at the sharp end of the stick. Has a great run here.
It'd be a brave log, but he's going to go for it. And Danilewski going to allow him to facilitate the... Oh, he's off, and he's going to spin it. Man, just to catch
quite
the
go all the way
car.
around.
But Danilewski gets right through and now has a 2.5-second advantage.
Yeah, deep into the braking zone there. Shallow line. You have to be really careful with how much input you put into that because it will oversteer on you. You saw it happen there for Alan Gullison. Just too much rotation in the tires as well as the inputs.
Oh, man.
The ring just catching air.
Having a huge moment up and over the curbs there.
Yeah, he was in a battle with Stephen McLean, both those drivers having a moment earlier. And we're trying to recatch the tail end of the field. Just
watch this
use
here.
it as a ramp.
Strikes those curves and all 4 wheels off the ground there. That will do it. Tractors can only do so much with that.
Certainly, especially if you don't ramp off it cleanly and keep your steering straight when you land to allow yourself to re-get some grip. It'll just start moving the way you have the wheel pointed. And it's so quick, you have to have great reflexes. You end up all 4 wheels in the air.
Anthony Dring off track again, and I feel like at this point, Fenn may have called it quits. Take a look at this one here. He's looking all fine.
Yeah, nope, there it is.
Back end comes around, and he's going to say, yep, I'm done.
Those tires probably quite warm from the incident earlier. Easy to spin out as a result when the traction isn't quite there.
Miguel Torres on board at the tail end of him as he tries to fend off Christopher Dame-Kohler right behind. Still have Roost and Carlson trying to battle Jack Peterson for the overall lead of this race as well. 2.5 between your top 3 cars. And in the GTDs, Philip Orkowski is second in the AMs, trying to fight it out Tony Calderaro. That would be for P5 in the overall GT3 field.
That would be those last 3, the really close battles on track. These battles are going to be solved by consistency over laps at this point for a lot of the GTD field. GT3 overall field, as well as in class.
Dan Gorbatenko has gone around tail of the field. So Gorbatenko going to find himself now off the road and tumble into the back end of the GTD field. So more unfortunate news befalling him.
Yeah, much like we saw with Anthony Dring, took too much curbing. You'll see it here. Isn't quite as, I would say, picturesque.
Still enough, though.
Those yellow anti-cut curbs really unsettle the car, especially because you're already putting in input. You don't straighten it out quite quickly. It's very easy to catch those as they spin.
Rukowski and Calderaro still fighting for 5th and 6th place in the overall GT3 field. 17th place overall in this race. And the one thing that has kept Rukowski from closing in much is the fact that Calderaro is in a draft battle of his own with Dennis Daniel just up the road, who is the driver that Rukowski is trying to fight it out with for the overall GTD race lead. If you're Calderaro, right, I mean, at what point do you just get out of the way and let this fight for the lead commence?
I think at the point where you realize that you're not going to get any faster, but it is a battle that he has had a bit of pace in.
Small little spin there for Casey Gatoll in the LMP2 field.
That battle between him and Curtin swinging back the other direction once again.
Is that going to turn into a battle of attrition now, I guess, throughout this race?
I would have to imagine at this point, based on the fact that I've seen both of them have moments, that it will be who has the least moments at this point that will be the successor of those drivers for the last spot of the top 5.
So Daniel Calderaro and Rokowski continue to battle this one out. It's the closest trio that we have on the racetrack at the moment. Quarter distance already achieved here in this one. And this race has been a little bit of a doozy so far today. A lot of attrition in the early going. A lot of aggressive dogfighting in the LMP2s in particular in the early going. But then we're starting to finally get into a rhythm.
We are for all the classes. The rhythm, I think, was a little bit easier to find for the GT3s than the LMP2s and the GTPs. But Jeremy Roos is going to go off track amongst all this. That changes
you're kidding me.
The conversation we're having. Once again, it's a small one. He's able to keep into third, but he does going to lose out a spot to Braden Carlson in the middle of that. Just too much rotation. You'll see it here coming out of the next corner. A little slidey into this one. And then just over-rotates. Such an awkward corner turn number 14 is. Slides across the grass and rejoins without having much fuss after that. That breaks that battle open for the lead of GTP wide, as they were pretty close to each other, about 5 to 6 tenths between the three of them prior to Jeremy's slide off at turn number 14.
Daniel Calderaro, Rokowski still running 16th through 18th. As we continue to mount the challenge here. Two Porsches trying to fight it out, and they have a Mercedes breaking up the fight. And you have to imagine, sooner or later, Rokowski's going to be getting a little bit impatient, thinking, hey, we're not fighting each other. Can you move, please? And if Calderaro doesn't get around Dennis Daniels soon, he's going to have to worry about that dive bomb for the 117.
Certainly is, and this battle as well is going to slowly allow Scott Moose, who's been a little bit faster over these past few laps, to join them and make it a two-way fight for GTD and a two-way fight for GTD Pro, which I think will make for a little bit interesting action as well, which I think will make for a moment we'll see, much like early on with the GTPs, drama may unfold.
Well, that'll do it right there. Rukowski way off the road. Look out as Scott Moose trying to capitalize. He's going to go down the inside and become one more car that Rukowski has to now bounce back against if he wants to get the fight done with Dennis Daniel up the road.
Dennis Daniel pretty going to appreciate the reprieve in terms of in-class battle, but no less pressure from Tony Calderaro to keep up the momentum. I think the GTPs are going to get into multi-class here.
Still in a grudge match amongst this duo. Further down the field, Stephen McLean. Oh boy, having to contend with Richard Danielewski down his inside. Whoa, and right behind them, Alan Gullison. You saw him have a aggressive stab, and that allows Nate Ben-Arowitz back into the fight for the 5th place spot.
He's going to be able to catch up to them in the multi-class traffic. It's going to be, I think, one of the great equalizer of all this. Nate Ben-Arowitz not going to spend any time trying to get around that car. After the turn 1 contact between the two, I think Alan Gullison is more than happy to be a little patient in the process.
Okay, well, that'll do it. Dennis Daniel out wide. Calderaro finally makes the pass. Scott Moose, will he try to capitalize? No dice, but that again, that's the same mistake Rukowski made. That lets Rukowski back into the fight.
Yeah, and Scott Moose almost running into Dennis Daniel into the braking zone at turn number 3. His lap traffic continues to unfold for the GTP drivers. Wow, Alan Gullison trying to keep up with Nate Ben-Arowitz.
Ben-Arowitz on the clawback, and even though he's in a 5th, it still isn't nearly enough to win that championship. Jeremy Roost still running in 3rd. Now, if Roost finishes 3rd, Ben-Arowitz needs to win. He is back by 9 seconds right now from the class leaders. Not an insurmountable gap in the span of an hour, but he would need to put down some storming lap times and really hope that Peterson gets held up by a lot of lap traffic to get it done.
Certainly, as well as the likes of a few other drivers. See how also the pit cycle, I think, will add a fun bit to this fight as well.
Battle is on for the GTD race lead as well as Daniel let through Moose, and that now has Rukowski breathing down his neck. And Rukowski not close enough to contend for the advantage this time by Dennis Daniel. Still leads the way as the GTPs finish making their way through.
I think add a couple of battles there. Boy, howdy.
Yeah, a bit of a close encounter there with, I believe that to have been Gullison. No, sorry, that was Braden Carlson, who's trying to fight it out with Jeremy Roost hot on his heels.
Yeah, trying to keep up with Jack Peterson just ahead of him, too.
Oh, you'll love a good old GTP fight in the middle of lap traffic on a Sunday night as nearing the halfway point already. This race has flown by us so far. Calderaro and Scott Moose still running 4th and 5th for the Mercedes and the Porsche. This is for position in class. It's for 4th in GTD Pro.
These two, we saw them battle earlier. I think they're going to be battling a little bit more now, as they no longer have GTDs to contend with amongst them. The two battles that were originally a 4-way fight for position overall, now splitting up into 2-2 fight. 1v1, 2-way fights. There we go.
So Miguel Torres and Christopher Dame-Kohler continuing to fight this one out amongst themselves as Torres and Dame-Kohler still sitting 2nd and 3rd at LMP2, and we haven't seen the LMP2s get too feisty in the last little while, but it looks like that might be changing. And look at them both power sliding over the top side of Portimao.
It's really easy to do in these prototypes, especially the LP2s, to get a little bit of slip angle going on as these two drag race down to turn number 1.
And finally, Roklowski completes the pass on the likes of Dennis Daniel for the GTD class lead.
Now he has to hold on to it. We've seen both these drivers have brief moments earlier. We'll see if the consistency remains for them.
And again, a slip up there as GTP traffic makes its way through. That puts them side by side again. Daniel flashing the headlights. Sorry, Roklowski flashing the headlights. Daniel gives the spot back. So Daniel continuing to fight this one out, but looking like he might be starting to drop position here. And has he used up his equipment, trying to maintain that race lead?
I'm not fully certain. I think he just also got a little unsettled there amongst all that. Didn't want to, end up wrecking out. So see if he has the ability to claw back into the fight there. Big slide for both those drivers. Again.
Now they're really putting that traction control through its paces, aren't they? Wanting to give it, make sure it earns its position in the race car. Calderaro and Moose still close for 4th and 5th as well in the GT3 field.
They certainly are. Pockets of battling, and this one, an interesting one. It's all Colorado, a little wide, but keeps on to the position. See if Moose has the over-under throughout turn number 4.
So Calderaro and Moose maintaining the run for 4th and 5th. 0.3 of a second now. And still the battle between the two German supercars remains uncontested. So Moose and Calderaro. Now they're remaining in lockstep. Do you reckon Moose makes this move anytime soon?
I think there's either the opportunity, if he thinks he has more pace, that he can offset the more, the fuel expenditure. There's also the idea that if, we're running about the same pace, but I know that I can stay ahead of him once I get past him. I might just pass him in the pit lane by saving fuel by hanging out behind him. I think one of those two strategies, we'll see which one is the one that Scott chooses.
Well, Scott Moose, you saw him bobble, track out a bit wide. Still retains that quarter-second deficit. He tries to run down with Calderaro. Headed down into turn number 1, and yet again, not close enough to fight this one out for the spot that he's looking for. But Scott Moose has a lot of time to make this time up. And given how close he's been, you have to imagine he's going to get around him before too much longer here.
Yeah, I think it's likely at this point. At some point, whenever he gets the last bit of pace between those two drivers, it'll happen. I get the feeling as well, Casey Catola looking for a good run here to get around James Curtin again. These two, I think, can swap positions all night, and that is going to, I think, be no different here in the back half of the race.
Catola looking to close all over the back of James Curtin, trying to go around the outside for the number 4 spot. That outside turns to inside, going for the good all over under. Not able to do much with it, though. And so we keep the status quo going. Dennis Daniel has had an off. This was the fight for the GTD race lead. And 2 wide coming over the rise. And around he goes. Ongoing battle for 4th in the GTD field, by the way, as well.
Dan Korbatenko, Stephen McLean. I think the opportunity there. Let's see if Dan Korbatenko can rebuild the gap and pace that he had earlier on.
So McLean and Gorbatin continue to fight this one out. You also have James Curtin and Case Gatola that have been going side by side for effectively the entirety of the lap here.
More or less.
Yeah, Curtin finally able to outlast this one. This is the entire battle from start to finish. It starts here, headed through the Tour of Hip hairpin, and it's just on.
It is just on. They keep on as they work their way through 6, 7 into 8 Samsung corner. Still too wide. They mostly have it sorted out, but not quite. Still at overlap of a tire to keep those two battling down into turn number 9. And the likes of the Portimao 10 and 11 complex. Such a fun one there. Such a wide line as well. It's going to see this battle come back into it as the speed versus track position game gets played out. Turn number 13, I think, is where we're going to finally see a little bit of overlap. Take them back into, back out of
and
too wide that they had been through for the back half of the lap.
And all of that for Curtin to pit out of the final corner on that lap as well. This was an attempted move as Nate Benarowitz went down the inside of Richard Danielewski. Attempted for it at least. No joy, and we're going to keep it with this one here because for Benarowitz, all the progress undone in an instant, just 30 seconds later.
Yeah, you'll see it here, getting up into Portimao. Such a sketchy, I say sketchy loosely, you're on the limit of grip throughout a lot of this. You can apply the power too early, you're going to end up struggling. And we see it as well in turn number 13, which I think is where this problem occurs. Late in the braking, and he's going to end up going around. We saw him have this issue in qualifying, so it's unfortunate to see him have it again in the race itself.
Bad to worse for Nate Benarowitz. A tough break for him. James Curtin caught driving slowly. This is out of pit road. Sorry, Dennis Daniel now with a black flag, actually.
Ooh.
And that'd be for incident limits there, Fenn.
Yeah, that would be. It's an easy thing to rack up. The track limit's not the most forgiving.
So McLean and Gorbatenko remaining 4th and 5th as Miguel Torres and Christopher Dane-Kohler going to keep this pressure up amongst themselves for 2nd place in your LMP2 field. Into pit road so far, we have seen Benarowitz, Katola, Curtin, as well as Lindley and Marino currently in the box as well. Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson have just pitted this time by, right at halfway.
Yeah, it seems about the spot for pit lane to become a little bit busier.
Just a little bit, as mandatory pit stops for the afternoon are quickly put into the books. And will we see Torres and Dane-Kohler make their way into the box? If I'm Dane-Kohler, you might be thinking undercut strategy right about now. Get some clean air, especially with a good chunk of field in pit road. And how about that?
Yep.
Read my mind as he makes his way in.
I imagine we'll see Miguel Torres before too long as well. He's going to follow the Alex Lalonde and the longer pit strategy you can do here, which puts these LMP2s just ahead of a lot of the GTP field, which should make for some interesting traffic.
Dane-Kohler into pit road. He is joined by Parker Sukup just behind, as well as Dennis Daniel going back down pit road to serve that black flag that he picked up for the instant limits. That would be a drive-through penalty. Still waiting on the top two in both prototype fields in the pit road.
Yeah, both of those still going to get the extra lap out. Brief moment, I think I'm talking a little bit ahead. You see there, just too much power too early. It's going to cost him. Big crunch there. Just trying to figure out what happened, why he was slow to begin with, and that is, in fact, the reasoning.
Yeah, that'll do it, won't it? That's a tough break. A lot of damage in front of that Mercedes now. He's not going to be fighting for anything anytime soon.
Definitely not. I think we say also as well, the pit strategy working well in Braden Carlson's favor is he's going to jump Jackson Peterson with pit strategy.
Oh, that's said, not by much, and Peterson is right there, ready to challenge, and nearly wipes out the tail of the Cadillac.
Certainly has just enough to get ahead. Now has to see if he can defend it. This case of Tola and Parker Sukup also have a moment. These two, I think, will be ones to watch. This Jack Peterson largely pretty consistently quick amongst these three drivers that are at the sharp end of the stick, with the including Jeremy Roost.
Oh, he's right there. He's closing. Is it enough to make that look into turn number 1? You bet your bottom dollar it is.
Ooh.
Going for the inside, and can he take that one? Contact, muscles the 21 out, and Peterson will retake the race lead, or the net race lead.
And Carlson trying to defend, runs out of room, gets bumped out of the way. We'll see if the repays the favor into the hairpin in. Torrey Vip, a good place for overtake if the overlap exists.
Not quite. Didn't have the momentum.
Yeah, did not indeed. Alan Gullison.
Oh, Daniel's been black flagged again, by the way, this time for speeding on the way to pit road.
Yeah, okay. That insult to injury at that point.
And there you saw Nate Benarwitz make the pass on Alan Gullison as well. Finally puts himself back up into 5th. Now we'll see if he can hold it or if he's going to drop it again. This is on board Dennis Daniel on his way into pit road. Yeah, way too late. Yeah, was nowhere close to pit road speed.
Kind of want to break a route when you cross that dotted line that indicates where that opening is for pit lane. Usually a pretty good braking opportunity, as Trayden Carlson and around Jack Peterson as a result of multi-class traffic slowing down the ladder.
All right, let them fight. Time for round 3 as they make their way into turn number 1. Gullison still leads the way. Carlson leads the way. Jack Peterson hot on his heels.
This allows, I think it's going to make this 14-second gap that Nate Benarwitz has one that we're going to see slow down ever so slightly.
More cars making their way back out onto the racetrack after pit stops as well here. So as final contenders make their way into the box, there is your fight for the race lead. And down the inside goes Jack Peterson. Top end of the hill. Contact again with the side of Carlson. And Carlson's got to be getting frustrated. He's thinking, really? You can't pass me without dooring me at the same time?
Yeah, I think Carlson going to wait for the opportunity to bring the fight back. Doesn't want to overstretch and cause more incidents. Already had one lockup. Trying to keep a solid run, but almost runs it. Jack Peterson, he's playing very defensive.
Had the run, just not the space that time. He was too close. Jack Peterson did good. He did good defensive driving there, right? I mean, just kept that car trapped on the apex.
Certainly, I'm watching the gap here between these two and where Nate Benarwitz currently is in, well, I think be net 4th once Jeremy Roost comes in. As Jeremy, one of the 2 GTP drivers still yet to come in for the pit lane stop.
Well, this fight for the GTP race lead is going to continue to be one that is hotly contested for the next little while. Other side of the racetrack, your LMP2 fight for 4th continues to be close contested between Casey Gatola and Parker Sukup.
Yeah, Casey Gatola getting a better pit lane strategy on top of trying to fight this driver, as he's had a better lap pace, which is how he brings him into the back end of the fight. And multi-class traffic, I think, is going to add in another factor as well.
That's McLean of the Lamborghini forced to lap by your LMP2 drivers. Jimmy Roost and Richard Danielewski officially into pit road. This time by, that will complete the strategies for all drivers in this field. However they run now is how they will run to the end.
At least how much they can gain in the pit lane strategy. Curious to see where Jimmy Roost comes out in relative to Nate Benarwitz, who has been largely my gosh, Parker Sukup just getting around easily into the braking zone.
Yes, sir. Quite a run there. James Curtin is pulling it off the racetrack. He is calling it quits for tonight. Well, there is your top two, Peterson and Carlson. Check that. Jeremy Roost out of pit road already, only by 3.5 seconds. But Roost has lit the candles since they came down to pit road. The overcut strategy is what works out for him.
Yeah, just 5 to 7 seconds. Sorry, yes, 5 to 7 seconds quicker in the pit box than Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson. Curious to see if that fuel metric is working well for him.
You would also
lock up.
You'd also have to imagine that a lot of this like close quarters fighting has helped him as well.
Certainly, these two, Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson, up until that point where Braden Carlson had a lockup into turn number 3, had largely, I think, been slowing each other down, and that also allows Nate Benarowitz to have less of a gap to catch up to Richard Danielewski again, amongst everything else, as well as those two.
So 1.5 seconds between the duo here, while Sukup and Katola continue to be 4th and 5th. Championship update, by the way. This is still looking like it's going to go down to the final race, but that said, even though it will not be official today, the only realistic way that I'm seeing that Roost will be able to fight for that championship would be if you were to have, we're talking in the realm of 13 GTPs, give or take, showing up to the final race of the season, and that it's not happening.
Yeah, not easily. I don't imagine that we're going to find 7 more in the course of a week to rejoin these drivers.
Not unless you hijack them from the second split.
Yeah, that'd be the one way to do it, but I don't think it would be a way that the second split would probably want, as they have their own fights still happening in those championships that they'd love to resolve on their own without having to get the other split involved.
Well, that said, Roost just got slowed up by the Acura there, and that lets Peterson get right back into the fray.
It certainly is. Jeremy Roost had also had a slow run through the final corner of the previous lap, which is part of the gap closing down between Jeremy Roost. That 3-second gap he built up over pit lane strategy burned away because of multi-class traffic. So easy to do one way or the other. The more famous phrasings of traffic giveth and traffic taketh away.
Casey Katola is off the road, and he looks like he's had quite an incident somewhere. He took a toe to pit road after going off track. This is turn 1 for the 88 entry.
Yeah, you'll see it here. Unsettled, doesn't really let it settle, tries to get it back in, and then just slides to a stop.
He did keep it
Technically
off the wall.
Doesn't hit anything. He does, but they then decides that's enough for today.
I thought for sure he might hit the wall there. Here comes Jack Peterson, by the way, trying to run down Jeremy Roost for the race lead. Peterson down the inside of Roost, looking to take that one away into turn number 1, and Roost fighting this one out. He's gone, and he's taken out again. Back onto the track.
Bring him back into contact.
And that means they're still side by side for the lead, making their way out of turn 3, headed towards Turry Vip.
Jeez. Jack Peterson.
It's just been clumsy fighting through the turns 1 to 3 section all day for all 3 of your prototype vehicles. Every time they go side by side, there's contact being made. It's like, at what point are we going to learn the lesson?
Nobody wants to be the one that lifts out and makes it an easy fight for someone, even in the opening turns. But it is still, I would have to imagine, really frustrating as Jeremy Roost is now fighting with Nate Benarowitz. Jeremy Roost had to hold on here. You can see that.
And I mean, again,
just too close.
You can't exactly fault Jack Peterson for it.
Not fully.
Now,
Jack Peterson made the lunge.
I am curious about something here on this one. I'm gonna hold tongue for the time being. You might already know what I'm looking at here, Fen, but
I think so. Right here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were no brake lights until right there. He let that car roll, and I'm not a fan of that one.
It's often both in iRacing's official, kind of part of their code of conduct, as well as pretty much every league I know of says that is a thing to do to prevent accidents from becoming worse. Just not enough room there for both those drivers.
You can see that right now there is a tail light there that is illuminated to let you know the car is running, but there's no brake lights, not until right there. That's where he finally applies the brakes.
Oh.
And that caused additional contact with Peterson and others.
Yeah, it's a little too late. That's going to cause damage for Jerry Roost, and that's where we see, I think, a couple of fights brewing in GTP as a result.
Including for the race lead. Still, you saw Brady Carlson run down Jack Peterson, and still they remained nose to tail, unable to get separated.
Now, all that contact also has brought Jerry Roost into a fight with Nate Benarowitz.
For those of you
Steve McLean.
For those, by the way, that maybe wondered about their GTD field, I know we haven't talked about them in a while. Right now, no ongoing fights in the GTD or GTD Pro fields. The close gap is a second and a half between Savage and Lindley. Otherwise, you're looking at 5 seconds or more between most other cars in the class. So that's why we haven't checked in on them much lately. There's a much more pressing fight to keep tabs with.
Certainly is, and these drivers in the GTP field, I think, have largely been the drivers we've kind of had what we're having with the GTD and GTD Pro fields, where they are usually running their own race. It's largely not as, big of a gap, close of a fight, or, brutal of contacts that we've seen.
Peterson and Carlson continuing to go 1 and 2 as they make their way back into the back down into the middle sections of the racetrack. Philip Roklowski has had it off.
Early on in the lap, just unsettled it. Too much rotation and acceleration. Keeps it out of the tire barrier and keeps that car going the right direction. But speaking of Roklowski,
now Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson, they remain only half a second apart. And they're not the only GTP fight, by the way, because right behind them, Daniel Luski and Roost and Benarowitz all under Blake. And for Benarowitz, it's got to be a frustrating day, right? I mean, he's been spun twice, and he has still run the gap down to 4.2 seconds of the class leader. He is absolutely the fastest car out here right now.
Certainly is, and I think it's a pretty frustrating day for literally everyone in this class. I don't think I've seen a single GTP not be involved in something at some point. So frustrating for everyone because they're all trying to play for position here. Jerry Roost gonna force the issue there for Roklowski, and then Dave Benarowitz gonna make it lunge down, well, try to. Little ways wide, but almost runs into Jeremy Roost. Gosh, it's been, like we've said at the start, I think it's still true. GTP tonight has been a street fight.
And all of that traffic getting through has allowed for Kyle Marler to run down Philip Roklowski for the GTD race lead as well after Roklowski's little half spin. So that has brought yet another class lead fight up for grabs in the final 15 minutes.
Yeah, that as well as, I think, a few other battles still brewing on track, if they haven't already been.
Daniel Luski continuing to try to fight for whatever he can for that third place position as they make their way around Colorado's lone Mercedes in the GTD field. Again, no efforts being made between. Well, I say that Daniel Luski's off the road,
oh my
so
gosh.
Jeremy Roost might not have to fight too hard to make this work as the 963, the season 963 Porsche trying to fight its way around Daniel Luski's Cadillac. Around the outside, and he's going to get through.
Yeah, Danny Luski going to separate the two leaders currently battling for that championship lead. They're taking to, I think, the final round in Fuji in a week's time.
Boy, right there, aren't they? As here comes Nate Bernarwitz now looking for the inside into the turn 2. Now to turn 3. He's got the overlap. He's going to send that one to the inside. Bernarwitz forces the issue into 4th.
Yeah, I got to try to keep up with that battle for the championship, trying to keep and minimize the damage here from this evening.
All of that will Kyle Marler manage to make the pass on Roklowski for the GTD race lead. Roklowski swung too wide through turn 1, and Marler would said, "Thank you very much," and he took that spot away. I think Roklowski had to serve a little mini slowdown penalty there.
I believe he did. That's why he ends up, but he's still pretty close amongst all this. One of the few battles on track, especially also this one that has been brewing in GTD Pro for the bottom 2 steps of the podium. As Will Lindley trying to keep up and get past Cash Savage to once again make that a 1-2 for the C-Sim GTD Pro entries.
Oh, Matt Marino has had an off just moments ago. It's all kicking off in the final 15 minutes, as it so often does. Whoa! Where was he going?
Yeah, so you miss the first one of these two. So turn on 1, little wide, gets a little loose, goes to correct it, overcorrects it.
Oh, goodness.
Then loses it through the inside of turn number 3, and that's how he ends up all the way over in the grass on the outside, looking like he had definitely not taken that corner even close to correctly, because he hadn't.
He's lucky no one was there.
Absolutely. It was one of those times where it's really glad he was on his own and not with anyone else to involve them.
Braden Carlson has run down Jack Peterson. And can he make that look into Turi Vip? Wants to go for the spot. He looked, but it wasn't enough.
Not quite. And just up the road from these two is that battle in GTD Pro. So it'll be interesting to see how the multi-class traffic impacts these two as they're continuing the battle.
Officially 10 minutes on the clock in this one, as Peterson and Carlson remain within a quarter of a second. I think this is one of the closest fights for a GTP race win at this point in the race that we have had all season long.
Oh, for sure.
But it makes you wonder how differently this race or this championship would have gone down if Ben Horowitz had chosen to run in the NLB2 to contend with Alex Lalonde.
Well, yeah, we talk about that. It'd be interesting to see how much tighter this field would have been throughout most of the field for race wins as well.
Roost and Benarwitz still within 0.4 of a second as well. And then don't forget, still have your GTD lead within a half a second as well. So try to keep tabs on about 4 different fights here simultaneously. And so Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson continue to battle this one out.
0.6. One that fluctuates so much as they work through multi-class traffic.
And like you said, Cash Savage and Will Lindley still hot on these guys' heels as well. So is Roost and Benarwitz. Among others, Roklowski hard on the binders. Has to go base to avoid running into the back of Kyle Marler.
That'll open up that gap by a good half a second. Such an easy mistake to make. We'll see how they work through it.
And at this point, Jeremy Roost is really going to be working to keep Benarwitz behind him as much as he can.
Gosh,
speaking of,
this
right in
battling just
front, yeah, that's second place. Cash Savage and Will Lindley scrambling for a moment.
Oh, boy.
As Roost and Benarwitz now side by side right behind. Someone's going to get used as a pick, and I'm sure you got to remember, got the C-Sim Porsche, and he's in communication with that Mustang as well, saying, hey, we're right here, guys, and they're going to split them as a result. Will Lindley flash the headlights towards Cash Savage.
Yeah, just wants to keep it all interesting. Nate Benarowitz going to go very aggressive and overcompensates. They're going to lose the car for just a moment, but has to stick behind Jeremy Roos. Had so much speed because of the draft going into that corner and just picked the braking marker incorrectly.
Peterson and Carlson, no moves been made into Tori Vip. Right behind them, Jeremy Roost and Benarowitz, and right behind them, Savage and Lindley.
Benarowitz is applying the pressure, getting impatient, making the move wherever he can, and there's going to be contact into turn 7. And that's going to force Benarowitz onto the wide line for Samsung, turn number 8.
If you're Roost, you are fed up at this point, because every car that's tried to overtake you has made contact in some degree.
Yeah.
And like, at what point do you just eventually start punching back?
I imagine just by being present, that's how he's been essentially kind of punching back. I mean, it's a street fight. Benarowitz just going to lean on the inside, really cut it close. He's had issues in this corner before, able to keep it open for the moment, but Jeremy Roos going to force the issue. That inside line turns to the outside line, looking for the over-under. Gonna get squeezed into the inside. Oh, my gosh.
And Roost able to fend him off as Benarowitz backed out of that final corner. So he'll drop to the gap to be about around 0.4 of a second, but still has time in the final 5 or 6 minutes of this race. Little ways up the road, Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson. Still a hotly contested battle between these two, as well as Peterson, with that Lucky Charm 69 entry, trying to keep his fellow Cadillac at bay. It's been only 0.4 between these two, or less, for the last several laps as well.
Yeah, these two, I think, have been a little bit of the calmer variant of these two fights that we've been seeing in the GTP field. And not one, I think, to be discounted as well, because both have had such good consistency. And I think it'd be interesting to see if Braden Carlson has the opportunity here to make up the time and get around the likes for the lead of the race. Has to do it within the next couple of laps, though, as they only have about 5 minutes left.
Potentially only 3 laps to go when we get around to the start-finish line this time by. May even be 2. We'll see how things pan down. Miguel Torres and Christopher Damekohler still within 0.3 of a second as well for the LMP2 fight. Kyle Marler, Philip Roklowski still half a second between them for the GTD lead. Danny Luski and Gullison about to have another fight here as well. So everyone wants to get involved in battles here in the final minutes.
Yeah, I'd say pretty much everybody has a dance partner in GTP in one form or another. It's interesting to see how all of these 3 fights get resolved. Super fun and fascinating to see after an hour of racing, everyone having somebody to fight with in the GTP category. And fights still in the LMP2 as well. There's the look out of Gullison.
Danielewski fends off Gullison, and he'll cover him off, preventing him from getting that run down the inside. And speaking of runs down the inside, Roklowski is going to be looking for one for sure here at turn number 1. He's only 3.5 tenths back from Kyle Marler, but dropping a lot, lost a lot of time coming out of that final corner. I think just now, even still, the gap is still increasing down the straight, so Marler's going to hold on for at least one more straightaway here.
Yeah, he's going to have a couple more minutes to keep up where he can get lap time, where he can find it.
Trying for it again is Alan Gullison as he wants to get that move on Danielewski for the number 5 spot. Twin Cadillacs going at it here right behind your GTD Pro leader of Max Fletcher, who I'm sure Fletcher's going to be eager to let these guys through, right? I mean, if you're Fletcher, I'm moving all the way to the side, just letting them have it, right? I mean, you got 9 seconds to the next car behind you. You don't need to risk your race fighting these guys.
Yeah, you don't want to risk the race fighting those guys. Let them through. You're not even trying to fight them to begin with, but you want to give them a good opportunity to pass without having to really impact the battle or impact your own race. You said, 10 seconds for them to sort it out. Plenty of opportunity for Max Fletcher, and he just is going to get that opportunity done quite quickly.
Peterson and Carlson will look for the white flag, this time by Jeremy Roost. Has Nate Benarwitz breathing down his neck once again, and this time Benarwitz forces the issue, gets through at Turvip. So Roost will drop back to 4th, and Benarwitz will look to extend the points lead with this one, but it will not be enough to take the championship home.
Slow run. Nate Benarwitz has just enough speed to get around both these cars. I believe pretty similar in pace. Interesting to see if Jeremy Roost has an answer here in the closing minutes to keep making this fight interesting, but that car is nursing a little bit of damage. I'm curious if now that Nate Benarwitz is free, if he'll be able to clear that gap and just kind of run away with this P3.
Well, that'll do it right there. Phoenix with a big slide, or Roost, sorry, with a big slide, and that will mean the end for him. So Benarwitz will drop. He'll pull out that gap to 3/10. Sorry, a 2nd and 3. And now this is it. 1 lap to go, and it's on for the overall lead of the race between Peterson and Carlson.
Yeah, Carlson has to take the opportunity here. 12 more corners to get it done in, and has to do it in a way that doesn't cause issues. One thing you want to keep in mind for these drivers, just because you get the pass done, if you do it well, contact's made, something happens amongst all that, it brings it into question, and the stewards are already going to be busy enough after this race, I fear. I don't think they'd want to add to their race here. Oh, Will Lindley really
they both got black flags. They both just got caught for the incident limit by going off track.
Oh, no.
Oh, my goodness. And just like that, Danielewski attacks Dollison as well for the final couple of spots up for grabs here. It is dramas everywhere on the final lap. Oh, and just like that, Daniel gets taken out. Peterson gets wiped out, by Braden Carlson. Carlson went for the Hail Mary, but he backs off. He redresses. He lets Peterson back through. Alex Alonso, that is Parker Sukup, around the outside of them.
Yeah.
Credit to Carlson. He let Peterson recover. He did not go for the pass. He let him redress. Can he get a run down the straight for the final time here? Up over the rise. It's close, but he's not going to get there. 10th and a half between the two.
But the battle between Alan Gullison, that car is so damaged. Much at the same time that battle between Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson came to blows, also the battle between Danielewski and Alan Gullison came to blows.
And we'll get a look at that in just a moment. For now, Max Fletcher making his way through the final corners, this time by Fletcher will take the win in GTD Pro. Kyle Marler still has Philip Roklowski breathing down his neck, with Alex Lalonde, the LMP2 winner, right behind him.
Got a few more corners to work their battles out. Cash out and Will Lindley serve their black flag penalties.
Goodness gracious. I mean, at that point, I would just race it out to the line anyway.
I think you technically lose less time at this track taking, but I'm not entirely
it wouldn't
certain
let you. You have to do a drive-through. You can't do a drive-through on the final lap. So Kyle Marler going to take the win in GTD. Lalonde backed off to let them fight it out. He will win in LMP2. This is what happened with Alan Gullison on the final lap of this race. He was fighting with Richard Danielewski. They both kind of swung a little bit wide awkwardly on their approach to the final couple of corners.
The battle was a little bit earlier. That's the slide out Alan Gullison that sealed the deal. The contact was at the same time the contact happened between Jack Peterson and Braden Carlson.
I assume, that would be it right there. Both cars off the road, squeezing each other into the sand trap, but again, letting each other recover.
And they just a little bit. They weren't quite as.
They picked up where they left off. This is on board with Braden Carlson. Watch as he went for the send, collided with Peterson after he locked up, and he stopped. He let him recover that one, and you saw him actually check up a few times there making sure that Peterson knew, yep, I'll let you take that. So great sportsmanship there for Brandon Carlson. I'm sure the stewards will look at that and they'll determine that, no harm, no foul. He let him recover it, and it didn't impact the finishing results of this race.
Mm-hmm. One of the it's always such a good moment when you get to see that sportsmanship get displayed in real time. It's always one that you kind of know that the stewards are going to be appreciative that there was no advantage gained as a result of that incident,
Yes.
and therefore one they can make a very quick determination on.
Well, coming home at the end of a thriller here in Algarve, it was Peterson with the race win after contact with Carlson on the final lap. In Arwitz comes on third, Jimmy Roost in fourth, Richard Danielewski in fifth. He had contact with Alan Gullison, and they will finish fifth and sixth respectively in GTP.
LMP2, it's going to be Lalonde taking home the win there. Alex Lalonde from Canada, with Miguel Torres coming home in second. Christopher Demko are going to round out the podium with the likes of Parker Sukup, Casey Catola, and James Curtin rounding out the 6-car LMP2 grid.
GTD Pro, it is the biggest field of the night, and it had Max Fletcher taking the win in a dominant fashion with Scott Moose and Tony Calderaro. Cash Savage had a fight with Will Lindley in the closing stages. It'll be Savage winning that one. Matt Marino was one lap down. Anthony Dring crashed early. He will not finish this race.
And then for GTD, Kyle Marler going to take home the win there after a war of attrition with Philip Rakowski for P2. Stephen McLean going to round out that podium with Dan Gorbatenko going to be the last finishing car. Dennis Daniel does not take to the checkered flag in fifth.
What a run that we had this afternoon. Let's take a rundown and give a chit-chat into the drivers that finished this race, numbers 1, 2, and 3. And we will start things off first and foremost with Max Fletcher, the driver that comes home number 1 in GTD Pro. We'll see if we get in touch with your prototype winners as well by the end of this one. But it is the driver, the number 17, taking the walk-off in GTD Pro. And, Max, while it was a little bit exciting for GTDM and GTP, you and Alex Lalonde, you both had pretty quiet races for your class lead. Talk us through it. This one as you walked this one out from Scott Moose.
Yeah, so it was really just a head down, keep pace going, try to keep consistency going. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but out of the final corner, the first time that Alex came around, he actually hit me in the butt a little bit. But all good, 0x, no damage. We kept our head down, and we secured this win.
Overall, it was quite the outing that you had here today. Obviously, it's yet another win for C-Sim in GTD Pro. And, you got one more. Do you reckon one of you guys will take home the win as well in Fuji next week?
We definitely hope so. Will and I have been battling throughout this entire season. I hope to see us both out at Fuji after the N24 this upcoming weekend. And yeah, both of us are looking to try and one of us take home the championship and one of us take home that win at Fuji.
And this is going to be the big one. Will Lindley finished down third in the he finished fifth in the GTD Pro category today. That's pretty big for you with you taking the class win today as well. So between you and Fletcher, who wins this championship, do you reckon?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a
You were 11
really
points
hard
apart
one.
entering today.
Yeah. Oh, I'll need to look at the score for this one, but it's really anyone's game in Fuji. Something can happen, an incident. Will and I, we both race so close together. We both know each other's pace. We've been racing together for 5 years. Coming up in December, actually, 5 years that I've been on Solaritas. And but yeah, it could really just be either one of us.
Well, wish you the best of luck then next week. It's going to be one of the C-Sim contenders in the championship. Now we just got to figure out which one it's going to be. We'll see you next time out in Japan.
See you next time.
Max Fletcher coming home number 1 in GTD Pro. And then in from AMS, it's going to be Kyle Marler. Fan, you're standing by with him.
I certainly am. Carl Mahler, congrats on the AM victory. It was a bit of a mixed bag, I feel like, for you. Kind of quiet at the end there. How was that race?
Yeah, I was not confident at all at this track. I was just going out there, and I was like, I'm just going to put some consistent laps down, take care of the tires, and then, the window just kind of opened up there at the end. I was genuinely shocked to be fighting for the lead there.
When you saw the GTD drivers, both Dennis Daniels as well as Philip Rakowski, having issues ahead of you, were you thinking, what was the plan there, especially going in the pit strategy, as you saw those drivers having a couple more incidents than you were having?
Yeah, I went in there. I took left side tires because they were down to like 76%. My right sides were at 86%, so just went ahead. It was chewing up the tires on the left, so I did not want to get in the situation where the car just suddenly wants to throw itself into a wall. So just trying to keep those temps down for the most part.
Looking a couple of weeks from now when we go to Fuji and the championship battle there, are you planning to try to see if you can make it onto the podium and onto this top step once again for the final race of the season?
Yeah, every week, you're looking to win for sure every single week. So that's what I'll be gunning for again.
Fantastic stuff. Any other shout outs, things you want to talk about before we let you get back to celebrating your win in GTD?
Shout out to the boys at Slaritas for helping me with the setup. Did not do the best with keeping that up to date this week, so it was nice to have those guys kind of pick up the slack in that area.
Fantastic stuff. Well, congrats again on the P1, Kyle Marler. We'll hope to see you back here in a couple weeks' time when we go out to Fuji.
All right, thank you.
And that was Kyle Marler, who comes on P1 in the GTD category.
And doesn't look like we'll get the chance to talk to Jack Peterson or Alex Lalonde here at the end of the day. But I tell you what, Finn, that race was a wild one, and this sets us up for something spectacular going into Fuji a week from today.
It certainly does. The gap only increases by a little bit between Nate Benarowitz as well as Jeremy Roost. Those two drivers, I think, are going to be in the same, almost like a grudge match at this point between those two drivers, given the nature of the amount of contact we saw in GTP as a whole. I know the stewards are going to have their hands full over these 2 weeks we have between this one and the final race of the season. But I think it'll be no less exciting to see where these 4 championships, as they all come down to the last race in Fuji.
Well, when we go racing next time up, it is going to be on Tuesday for the Aspire Racing Sports Car Championship at Imola, alongside the Mid-Atlantic Race Series from Road America. And Ole Miss Sorel, with just 2 races to go, take it to the Nashville Super Speedway. Beer League's back for more next week, as is the Speed Cup Series at Texas Motor Speedway. And they join us for one heck of a finale at Kansas Speedway for the SRE IAL Truck Series on Saturday night. In the meantime, if you want to find out more about who we are and what we can offer you, check us out today on www.greenflag.tv. My name is Little Remble alongside Finicini. Thank you all so much once again for joining us here. And with 1 race to go, things are about to get wild. It's all to play for in GTD Pro. GTD and GTP looking effectively sorted, but we'll make all of that official when we go racing one final time next week in the Temple of Speed.